Tecklenburg.
Here. And if you'd like to join us, Councilmember Shade is going to lead us in a prayer and Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've invited the pastor from Northbridge Baptist Church. Seeing that I stood on his steps for 12 hours a week ago today with several other people, I've asked Pastor Waring to please give us the invocation tonight.
Amen. Amen. Mr. Mayor, Council, thanks for having me here briefly tonight. My name is Joe Waring with Northbridge Baptist Church in West Ashley. Love to have you all come. You know who you are. Preaching's okay. Worship is awesome. Let's pray. Father, we just give you glory tonight. And Lord, we pray your favor and your blessing over this meeting to come. Lord, I pray specifically for integrity and unity that come from humility and wisdom over this group of people. God, give them, lead them so that they might be great leaders for those of us that live in this city. In Jesus' name we pray, amen and amen. Thank you, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend, for that nice prayer, and thank you for your hospitality of providing your church facilities as a polling place, a very busy one at that. Thank you, sir. So I think everybody knows this, but in the very unlikely event we needed to exit the building, these are our exit doors here. Do not use the elevator, and then just use the two stairs going down to the first floor, and there's one stairway going out to the front. I did want to recognize, I just see one of our new council members here with us tonight, or he will be a new council member in January. Ross Appel is in attendance with us. Thank you for being here, Mr. Appel. And next I'd like to ask Joe McGill, if you're in the house, and he is, to please come forward. He is the founder of the Slave Dwelling Project, and it works to engage the community in honest conversations about American history and raise awareness of how enslaved ancestors lived. And we have a proclamation, I think. So if you will bear with me, Mr. McGill, I'd like to read this for you. Whereas the City of Charleston is honored to recognize the Slave Dwelling Project, whose vision is to identify and assist property owners, government agencies, and organizations in the preservation of extant slave dwellings. I don't see that word every day, extant. I guess that means they're about to go out of existence if you weren't around to save them. Isn't that right? So whereas the robust mission of the Slave Dwelling Project includes raising awareness and bringing communities together in an effort to change the narrative of American history, to include the legacy of the enslaved, to preserve, protect, and maintain slave dwellings, and bring education about the contributions of African Americans. Whereas the Slave Dwelling Project seeks to foster productive conversations and engage communities in honest dialogue regarding slavery, race, and racial equality. And the Slave Dwelling Project engages communities all across the United States, not just in Charleston, but this man has traveled all over the country to every identifiable former slave dwelling place. It's a really remarkable quest that he's been on. Whereas on November 1st through 3rd, just passed, the Slave Dwelling Project hosted a community gathering entitled Let's Talk Reconstruction at Magnolia Plantation and Gardens. The objective of the gathering was to facilitate meaningful conversation about the significance of Reconstruction and its impact on our society, and more specifically, people of color. And whereas the City of Charleston is honored to recognize the Slave Dwelling Project and the efforts of Joseph McGill as crucial work within our community and our country as we continuously strive to tell an honest and inclusive narrative of our city's past. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, hereby proclaim Tuesday, November 12th as the Slave Dwelling Project Day in the City of Charleston. And as I mentioned, Joe goes, by the way, he's also a reenactor, a Civil War reenactor and descendant of enslaved. And it's just been an amazing journey that he's been on in identifying the research and going and spending the night individually in every one of these slave dwellings that he's identified. And I had the great honor about 2 years ago of spending the night with him in one of them myself. It's a remarkable journey that this man has been on, and it's an honor to recognize you. Mr. Joe McGill.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg, for the honor. And the invitation is open for anyone who would like to join us in the year 2020, our 10th year anniversary. Our conference this year will be at Clemson University. Next year will be at Clemson University if any of you would like to join us. So please look at our website, slavedwellingproject.org, and you can get all the details. Thank you.
All right, and so we also have a proclamation recognizing Buy Local Month. Are Jordan Amaker and Eileen Peters here? Y'all please come forward. They're with Low Country Local First, and for those who don't know, they do remarkable work in the community to keep our local businesses thriving. So once again, I have a little proclamation here that I'd like to share for you with our citizens and our council. Whereas the City of Charleston is proud to join with Low Country Local First in supporting and celebrating Charleston's local independent businesses and the impact they have on the city's culture, economy, and character. And by buying local, Charleston's residents embrace this unique, vibrant community and recognize that it's the one-of-a-kind businesses that keep us from becoming Anywhere USA and encourage a strong sense of pride in our city. And by buying local, Charleston's residents create prosperity for all. The multiplier effect of locals choosing locals creates diverse job opportunities, therefore protecting us from the effects of economic downturns. And y'all probably know the multiplier effect, but if you keep your dollars local as opposed to shopping with Amazon and sending your money off to Seattle, it really helps our local economy. There's a real multiplier effect. Whereas by buying local, Charleston residents support a healthy and happy community. Studies show that those who live in communities where local independent businesses are the norm are healthier and happier. Whereas by acknowledging November 15th through December 15th as Buy Local Month, the City of Charleston supports its local businesses that create jobs, boost the local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods, and we urge all citizens to join in this celebration and to buy local for the holidays and throughout the year. Now, therefore, I, John J. Tecklenburg, Mayor of the City of Charleston, do hereby proclaim November 15th through December 15th as Buy Local Month in the City of Charleston. And so I want everybody to think about that when you, I know it's real easy to go online on Amazon and buy all those presents and have them come in by UPS, but think about the local businesses that are right here in Charleston that you can have fun and make our whole community healthier and happier. With that, I'd like to call upon you if you'd like to make some remarks.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg and council members. I know many of you are small business owners yourselves, so hopefully you extra appreciate our work this time of year. We're very grateful to the City of Charleston for your recognition of Buy Local Month. Your engagement in this annual grassroots campaign not only helps to spread consumer awareness of the importance of buying local, but it sends a very clear message to your homegrown businesses that they matter and are valued. It's through this campaign that we highlight, support, and engage with our local businesses who make this community so unique, livable, and resilient. And we do so during the most important time of the year for our retail businesses in particular. By once again displaying Shop and Dine local banners for the holidays along King Street, we're taking one more step to direct attention and awareness to the businesses that build culture. It's the places where you can fix a shoe, find the perfect dress, buy a coffee or a new book, and connect with your neighbors. We know that we must invest in what we value or else risk losing it. And that includes being intentional with our holiday spending as individuals, businesses, and leaders in the community. Thank you again, and if you are looking for gifts, visit buylocalmonth.com. It's where we highlight all of our local businesses and what they offer this time of year. So, thank you again.
Buy local. All right, next we have a few public hearings this evening. Councilmember Shade, I'll be happy to recognize you. Yes, sir.
In the course of the election, we had, I was categorized by
Please use your microphone.
I just want to make a presentation to my colleague, because I was described by being some kind of vegetation, and I thought the present we're giving him tonight a potted plant. Councilmember Griffin, thank you so much for those comments.
A nice decor there for your desk. All right. So thank you. That was very kind. So now we have some public hearings. The first one up is a West Ashley rezoning, I believe. Councilmember Griffin, would you like to be recognized?
No.
No. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So as the screen comes up here, this first one is E1 1815 Beechwood Road. It's a rezoning from SR6 to diverse residential DR6. It actually ends up being almost like a downzoning because the density in SR6 is 8.7 and in DR6, it's 6 units an acre. Essentially, by going to the diverse residential DR, they are allowed to do multiple unit buildings as opposed to single family only in SR6. And that is what the applicant wishes to do on the property. Here you see it, it's off the edge of Ashley River Road, just north of Magwood. Beechwood comes in off to the side of that. There is a assisted living facility across Beechwood from this one, and there are limited business and general business zone properties along Ashley River Road to the east. The Planning Commission recommends approval. It conforms with our Century 5 plan, and staff recommends approval as well.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Okay, this matter will not be coming to council tonight because apparently the wrong street address was given, 1809 rather than 1815. So we are going to wait until our next meeting to take action on this matter. But the floor is open if anybody would like to comment or ask a question. Councilmember Shealy?
So this has been deferred twice now, I guess, right? Because the first time we didn't put, sorry. So this piece of property's been deferred twice now, because the first time we didn't put the zoning signs out, and therefore it got deferred to tonight. And now we've got the wrong address, so now it's going to be kicked down the road a little bit further, I guess. But I guess I'll go ahead and ask some questions. I do have some questions on this. I had spoken with Mr. Morgan on this and wanted to speak with the owners. It's in my district, and I never did hear from the owners. But when we look at this piece of property, the only access to this piece of property would be off of Beechwood Road. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I've looked at this property, and I've heard you say it's a downzoning from 8.7 units per acre down to 6 units per acre.
Yes, sir.
But if these were single-family homes, it's 0.65, I believe, on the acreage. I don't see how you could fit more homes on there than you can townhomes. And maybe I'm missing something, but if you've got one access in, I don't know how, this is a downzoning, I don't see how you could fit as many homes as you could townhomes.
Right. And given the configuration of the lot, it could be that you can fit more townhouses than you can single-family houses. But the actual categories do have it's a de facto downzoning via the actual categories. But on the property, it could be that once you configure it, and I don't know their intent as far as where they would put townhouses versus single-family houses, that kind of thing. As I look at it, it could be that you would have fewer single-family houses than you would townhouses.
Okay. Well, we're not voting on it tonight, and I've got time to take a closer look at it, but it's very difficult for me to approve to have more housing in an area that is probably the worst traffic area that we have in the city of Charleston, to approve a zoning change to increase traffic in that area. It would be a mistake for me to do that to my constituents, but certainly we've got more time to take a look at it, so thank you.
All right. Apparently, it was a very innocent mistake. The property was subdivided, and originally that was 1809 Beechwood, and so that was the address given prior to the subdivision. So 1815 is in effect a new address, so that's how that happened. Oh, he can speak. We'll allow you to speak, sir, if you want to address the matter.
Sure, I'll answer any questions.
It's a public hearing. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
Matthew Chambers, I live at 218 Marsh Oaks Drive. I do own this property. The previous zoning is SR6, and you can, by zoning, put more single-family residential units on that property. The issue is access. You have to put a cul-de-sac in. It has to be 50 feet wide, and frankly, to do that, you have to cut a lot of trees down. So in rezoning it to DR6, I can put one structure on the back of the property. The plan is a 3-unit attached property, 85 feet wide by 40 feet deep, access by driveway. That's the plan. So that's all I have. And I honestly didn't know 815 was a new address until just now.
You've got a new address. Yes, sir.
So I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll bring this back to council at our next meeting. So next, number 2, Mr. Morgan.
Okay, this is 1220 Hobart Avenue, which is in the Ashleyville, Maryville area. You get to the right picture. These are just some pictures there. It backs up to properties that front on Ashley River Road in the Ashleyville, Maryville area. The request from the applicant was to go from SR2, as it's currently zoned, to general business. However, staff and the Planning Commission both recommended for limited business to lessen the impact of the rezoning on the adjoining properties to the south, which are zoned for single-family development. Those are the properties that are shown in yellow on this map. Here you see in the comprehensive plan, it does show in our kind of highway designation, so GB would be appropriate, but LB would be as well. And again, that was some of the thinking at Planning Commission and at staff, is to help protect some of those folks that are across the street in residential areas. You can see that there's a nearby food distribution center across the street, a daycare facility, overflow parking for some of the nearby restaurants and bars, and then to the right there is a bar, music venue, the Tin Roof. So it's definitely an area that has a lot of more intense uses, and we were hopeful that with this LB, it could help reduce some of the intensity of those uses, since LB is not a 24-hour-a-day use such as the GB that fronts on Ashley River Road. I believe we have a couple other pictures of the property here. You see it blown up a little bit. It's a single-family structure on the property now. There you see it up close. And then we have, that's a nearby overflow parking for the Tin Roof, I believe. And then that is the Tin Roof itself. And then some houses across the street that are residential that, again, the LB would help to protect. And you see the daycare center that's there as well. And some other residences nearby. So both staff and Planning Commission recommend for LB on this one.
All right, would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Anyone from the public? Hearing none, it comes to council. Councilmember Waring and then Griffin.
Thank you. This is in the district I represent, so I'm going to support the Planning Commission limited business.
Yes, sir.
So I'll make a motion to approve that.
All right, we have a motion to approve the LB zoning. Councilmember Griffin?
Do we have any idea what they want to put here?
I believe they are looking at some sort of office use, and we weren't completely clear with the applicant understanding why they requested GB. I don't think they were completely opposed to the LB. I think they were just trying to see if they could get GB like the rest of the block.
Councilmember Shealy?
I was really going to ask just what Councilman Griffin said, but I do want to say it makes sense. I have actually parked in there several times to go over to Home Team Barbecue and other places, and it does not make sense for it to be single family, so I would.
You weren't going to the tin roof, you were going to Home Team. Yeah, right, okay.
That's his story, stick it to it.
Would anyone else like to be heard? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, the ayes have it. Number 3.
This is, here we go, sorry. 1165 Folly Road. This is, of course, covered by the Folly Road overlay as well. It currently is general office. It's in an area of Folly that does have residential across the street as well as some commercial uses. It's just south of a church and just north of a small retail strip center that has some restaurants in it that is also zoned limited business. We'll show you some pictures here. Again, it's in the highway recommendations from the comprehensive plan, so the LB is appropriate as per that. And then here you see it's an undeveloped tract, one of the few remaining undeveloped tracts along Folly Road, wooded. Of course, all tree preservation ordinances would have to be in effect here as well. You can kind of see how the buffer of trees was left to the property to the west, that is or to the south, that is the strip center. There you have the street that leads in adjacent to it that goes to the church. And there is the adjoining retail strip center that has some of the trees remaining along there. I would imagine similar development would occur on the property. And then this is residential backing up to the property in the northern end. And this is across the street, some residential and also some commercial. Again, staff and Planning Commission recommend for the limited business on that property.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter?
Mr. Mayor, William
Yes.
Ford.
Please come forward to the microphone and give us your name and address, please, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is William Ford. I'm actually a St. George real estate appraiser. I was looking to open a second office in Charleston because I'm going to retire to Folly Beach. I plan on putting a small strip center there for my personal office. I would like a limited business zoning, so when I rent my additional space, I can not only court office tenants, but more business tenants like myself that would be a good mix. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Anyone else would like to be heard? Hearing none, it comes to council. We got a motion to approve. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I met Mr. Ford when he appeared. I think it was the Planning Commission. And my purpose of going there was to be a representative for the Rethink Folly Road Steering Committee. And at that meeting, I made that was prior to our giving first reading to the Folly Road Overlay Amendment that is now going to ask redevelopers of property like Mr. Ford to build out the 12-foot multi-use path. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I'm assuming that you know that that's now part of your requirements, but I would like to have it on the record that that's why I would vote in favor of this.
All right. Would anyone else like to be heard? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Ford. Number 4.
Okay, this is 6 Riker Street on the peninsula. It's on the west side of Meeting. It is very close to the I-26 overpasses that go to the west of Meeting Street. It is an area that has a lot of limited business zoning fronting on Meeting Street, as well as some general business on the eastern side of Meeting. This is part of a larger redevelopment of several lots that goes to the north here. This parcel would actually just be used for vehicular access and some parking, but it would need to have the LB zoning so that it could be used that way. Currently, it's a vacant residential tract, zone DR1F, and both staff and Planning Commission recommend approval. Just going through, it's in the urban area of the city that, not the urban core, but the more urbanized area, which allows for limited business and those types of zonings that makes sense in a context of a neighborhood. And we also have some images here of the property itself. You can see here behind the Habitat for Humanity Restore. And again, some of the redevelopment that will be occurring to the north on parcels to the north that are vacant now, Kinlock Court in that area. Again, staff and planning commission recommend approval of the limited business.
All right, would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, it comes to council. We have a motion to approve and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 5.
And this is on 1707 McLeod, which is in James Island. It is annexation from back in, I believe, July. This is off Folly Road. It's across the street from some multifamily. It backs up to a general office zoned parcel, and then there are other parcels that are residential in Charleston County jurisdiction. The Planning Commission and staff recommend for the SR1, and I believe we have a couple of pictures of it. I believe there's a group home on the property now for veterans.
All right. Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, it comes to council.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Waring. All in Councilmember Shade. Oh, okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Okay. And then
Number 6.
E6 is 2951 Bolton Road, recent annexation. SR1 is the recommendation. It adjoins other properties that are SR1, and that fits the minimum lot standards in that location.
Would anyone like to be heard on this matter? Hearing none, it comes to council.
Move for approval.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Number 7.
Number 7 is deferred.
It is deferred, but we are having a public hearing because it was advertised. So if anybody wants to speak on this matter, they're welcome to this evening. Would anyone like to speak on the PUD for Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and Orleans Road? Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you just clarify that we'll have another public hearing about this before we take a vote?
We will. We most certainly will. Yeah. All right. So hearing no other comments, we're going to move on. Next is our approval of City Council minutes from October 8th. We have a motion to approve. Any changes, deletions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have citizens' participation period. Also, council and those attending, I introduced one of our new council members, but another one has arrived. So, Marie, would you please stand and be recognized? Marie Del Chapo from Daniel Island will be a new city council member effective January of this year, along with, I introduced earlier, Ross Appel from West Ashley. All right. Thank you all for being with us tonight. So, citizens' participation period.
Okay.
We have a whopping two people that have signed up, but we're not going to give you the 15 minutes. But we will give you 3 minutes, plenty of time, and welcome you to share your comments with us.
Okay, the first is Muhammad Idris, followed by Elijah Haywood the second, or is this the third?
Evening.
Third.
Evening. I wish we could give the mayor 3 minutes, but he got 4 years. That's a lot of time for doing nothing. My question, Mayor, is who owns Marion Square?
This is a comment period, but it is Washington Light Infantry and the Sumter Guards owns the property.
Who? But we take care of it, right?
We have a lease on it.
You all have a lease. Somebody else on this property got a statue up there, and we talking reparation and all of that, of a man who told the biggest lie, caused all the black and whites to start fighting. And we leasing the property, taking care of this property with taxpayer money, innocent people money, and we talking about reparation period, etc. Y'all should be ashamed of yourself. Why they can't take care of the property? Poor people are paying to take care of that property. And we got the biggest liar in the world, J.C. Calhoun up there, and y'all taking care of that. And you say you're the mayor of Charleston, South Carolina. I can't understand that. You give me 3 minutes, you say you're following Sammy, and Sammy say he's the devil. So you must be a devil yourself. You should take that statue down. You got somebody was building like a museum there that we paying for. Poor people are paying for this here. And you are promoting that statue up there, and we want to know why that museum was going to be built at the foot of Calhoun Street. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Elijah Hayward III. I serve as the Chief Operating Officer for the International African American Museum. I come this evening to just offer some gratitude. You see you have boxes in front of you. These are candles from our groundbreaking ceremony, and the candles read, Illuminating the African American Journey. About a couple weeks ago, we hosted the groundbreaking for the museum, and it was a really amazing milestone, one that was about 20 years in the making. We are very clear that milestones such as the one that we celebrated would not be possible without the tremendous support of the city. So I'm here today to thank Mayor Tecklenburg and City Council for your support of our project. We really appreciate everything that you've done to allow us to reach this point. Also wanted to thank, in particular, the city staff for their role in helping to support the groundbreaking ceremony and making it what it was. We're very grateful for just your partnership and everything you continue to do to make our project a reality. So thank you very much.
Thank you kindly. Would anyone else like to be heard since we have the time? All right. Well, thank you for participating in our citizens' participation period. Next, we have petitions and communications. First up is a resolution. It says extending an invitation, but in effect, what we're doing is approving our sister city agreement with the city of Doha, Qatar. And I don't see Sister City's representatives here, but it's in your program, and we were so blessed to have the ambassador from Qatar here recently, and they've offered a great deal of hospitality to us. By the way, in a couple of years, they're having the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup the big final tournament in Doha, and so I guess it would be all on our nickel, but we're invited to attend. And Councilmember Shealy, by the way, has agreed to serve on the committee that will directly follow this sister city relationship. Any further discussion or questions? Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to let council know that this particular sister city agreement is a little bit bigger, well, it's a lot bigger, a lot more involved than some of the other sister cities that we've had before. We've got a real opportunity for some economic development out of Doha, specifically for Johns Island, maybe West Ashley, and some of the other areas. So I hope I can pique your interest in what's going on here, because there's a lot with education. MUSC is very involved with this. In fact, we have cardiac surgeons that are actually sharing and studying along with Doha surgeons, particularly with young people and heart problems. University of South Carolina, Clemson, College of Charleston's all involved in this. Of course, Boeing's very involved, and there's a lot of other groups that are very, very involved and interested in this. And I think we've got a real opportunity with this particular sister city agreement. And I hope you'll pay attention to it and support it as you hear more about it. So, thank you.
Right. Thank you. Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor, right? That was confirmed. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, just to advise council, we did have a second meeting of our new Underground Utilities Committee. and Tracy McKee is kind of staffing that, but she wasn't able to attend. So if I could call on Jacob Lindsay, who was there, to give us just a very brief report about what we discussed there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Who's on that committee?
I will get that for you in just one moment.
Never mind.
I've got it right here. Myself, Councilmember Wagner, because we wanted a council member from the Public Works Committee, Troy Miller from James Island, Susan Pearlstein, George Palmer from the West Side, Danny Cassis and Bill Turner from Dominion, David Grant and Edmund Most from our staff.
So on October 31st, this group met and discussed a number of things, including the goals and the purposes of the committee. They looked at prioritizing areas where utilities can go underground, and we are looking at creating a sort of a cost-benefit ranking system or valuation matrix. They discussed the matter of respecting grand trees, which is often a conflict when undergrounding utilities, researching best practices, especially when installing underground utilities in existing neighborhoods, which is not often done. Typically, it's on commercial corridors. The next steps is that the group will be looking at a future ordinance, and the planning department will be looking at creating that valuation matrix so we can look at cost benefit when looking at undergrounding utilities, and the legal and parks departments are going to work on a list of neighborhoods for future consideration for placing utilities underground.
And then finally, look for ways to move along the neighborhoods that are already on the list of neighborhoods. And there's one that's getting ready to proceed, that's Country Club 2. They've finally met all their requirements and they're getting ready to go underground. But we've got this long-standing list. It's got about a dozen neighborhoods on it. And we want to set up a fair way to either move them along, or if they're not going to step up to the plate and get all their easements and all in place, you know, to start prioritizing other places in the city, and some being commercial corridors, or where there's really beautiful canopies of trees that we want to protect, and be able to move forward with some of the funding we have. We have $6 million sitting in the bank, and we only put up 35% when we do a project, and Dominion puts up 50%. So in effect, I mean, we could leverage that existing $6 million for $18 million worth of undergrounding right now if we just get this thing moving, and that's what this committee is going to be helping us do. So I wanted to give a report on that. Yes, Councilmember Moody came for a little while at our meeting.
Quick question. Has there been any focus at all? I know that's all residential, the 50, 35, 15. Is there any consideration, are you all looking at the commercial end of this too? Is there any, can you share any information on that?
Yes, Councilmember. So we haven't done that work presently. Our department hasn't, but that certainly is going to be something that we do consider when we create this valuation matrix. And that may end up taking any number of different forms, but we think that the commercial areas absolutely need to have a similar way of evaluating how undergrounding happens. So yes, we will be doing that.
But the state, or I guess the Public Service Commission, doesn't allow the utilities to do the same deal. Is that's my understanding anyway. I'm just...
I don't have a full understanding of that, and that's something that we're going to be evaluating more closely as we dig into this.
We need to change our ordinance, but we can prescribe a higher priority to commercial districts if we want to. It's just the way the city set it up 20 years ago, that it was focused on.
What about the franchise fee? Because that's basically what we're paying for it. Is that being negotiated too? Because that's going to be coming up here in 2024?
2026, so we've got a little time on that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Shade.
I just wanted to build on what Councilmember Moody was mentioning, because there's certain parts of West Ashley, particularly Old Town Road would be a prime example of, we get Charlestown Landing, that would be, needs attention along that corridor. I know the county is about to unveil its plans for this park next door to Charlestown Landing. They meet us an opportunity to work with the state and the county to look at those opportunities to vary some of these lines.
Councilmember Seeking.
Is there a place where we publish the current list of neighborhoods that are on and a prioritization?
I've got it right here.
I mean, I just,
I'll be glad to share it with you.
one of the places in conjunction with the Gilliard construction was Ansonboro. There was part of the concession for.
They're number 4 on the list, and they just never got their easements all together. And what part of the discussion I'll share is that sometimes if you take the whole neighborhood, it's harder to get it done, and we feel like it'll be better to prioritize certain roads, based on the canopy of trees, maybe based on the importance of the commercial district, rather than prescribing that a whole neighborhood has to be done at once, because it makes it difficult apparently to get it to completion, depending on how big the neighborhood is. Great. All right. So next, if I could call Tracy McKee to finish a status report on our Novak Consulting Process and Service Improvement Work Plan. We started at the last meeting, and we talked about TRC, but there were many other things they've been working on, so she's going to try to give us a brief update on the rest of them.
So first off, Councilmember Seekings, that list of neighborhoods is in the first meeting notes from that committee. So I'll make sure that you get those.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'm going to jump ahead because you all have seen that. And I promise this will be brief because most of what I really wanted to show you guys last time was about TRC. So, thank you for indulging me again 2 weeks later. I think, a couple of points that I failed to communicate a couple of weeks ago were, number one, that implementing the recommendations made by Novak has really had a very positive impact on improving delivery of city services. The recommendations have allowed us to really focus on the most impactful and the most important changes that we can make to better improve services. It's also really helped departments. They are really embracing the change, and I sense that they're feeling much more empowered than ever to actually make additional improvements that they see in their work. So I think those are really important things to communicate to y'all. So we'll dive right into the public service piece. There are really 2 reports produced related to public service. The first was focused on environmental service and fleet operations. And then the second was an assessment of the department's organizational structure. So I just wanted to, these are just highlights. You have the report, and I think you guys have my slides now, so I'll run through these really quickly. But the first was to reassign fleet to public service. That's been completed. Another great recommendation was to expand the technology used to trash and street sweeping. I know that it's been completed for trash, and I believe that's being worked on for street sweeping as well, so that's going really, really well. Prioritizing acquisition of the automatic side loaders, or ASLs. That was a recommendation that came out of this. And also the big bellies. So, introducing those high capacity receptacles downtown. We'll talk about the impact of those. And actually the second one, all of the recommendations have already been implemented. So the ASLs. We introduced the first ASL into our garbage collection fleet in 2019. So when this is fully implemented, we expect to see the number of routes that we run will go down from 41 to 32 routes because of the efficiencies introduced with the ASLs. And when they are fully implemented, we can expect to see, we hope, about 1.2 million in savings based on those efficiencies. So I think that's a really, really great product of just one of the recommendations from the Novak Consulting Services, or Novak Consulting Group. So the other one was the big bellies. As you all know, those went online this year. So our folks would go and collect those old bins 6 to 7 times a day. So now these receptacles actually send notifications when they're ready to be collected, so, which is really, really great. It's really allowed that additional capacity to focus those staff on groundskeeping duties, and they've been able to eliminate some temporary positions. So we're seeing some savings there as well. Special events, a lot of good stuff going on here. This team is really, really going gangbusters. We created a new special events manager position that is actually all transferring to the livability department. So it'll be right in line with all the tourism and livability. They are working really hard to make the whole application process digital. Yay! So the applicants are really happy about that, and so they're expecting to go live with that in January. Lastly, the IT governance, one of the big recommendations was to do an IT strategic plan. This is a pretty recent report. They've already been working on the cybersecurity element of that. All the other recommendations are expected to be executed in 2020. The park staffing study, I think you all know a work order management system was implemented earlier this year, and so that's really helped the parks become much more efficient in their work, and I believe all the staffing recommendations that were made were entered into their 2020 budget. So if you guys need a refresher on that, please look at the report to approve that for the parks, parks budget. And then purchasing, we did give that report to you all too, but those recommendations are actually still being vetted by BFRC. So, and like I said last time, this was not a one-person effort. It's multiple departments working together to make all these changes to how we provide services. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could you go back to the sanitation
Yes,
slide?
sir. Which one?
One where you said you're going to make the route more effective by cutting the amount of routes.
Cutting the number of routes, yes, sir.
How you all, I mean, the city is growing. How you going to cut route on sanitation? I mean, we did Route Smart several years ago,
yep,
which was one of the biggest disasters, I think, in the city. And it still is, and you're going to cut routes in order to make it more effective?
So this is because the efficiency of the new machinery. I'm not an expert in this, so forgive me if I might stumble here a little bit with this, but these new trucks only require one driver. So right now we have one driver, we have 2 people on all of our existing trucks, so now we can use these with just one driver. So and it picks up so much faster and it's so much more efficient that's what will allow us to actually combine routes and cut down the number of routes.
I might not be too smart, but I just don't see how you can do it. I mean, right now with the system that you got now, I live on Sumter Street.
We've actually been able to reduce routes already with the introduction of just the 2 this year, and it's been very effective.
You can reduce routes. These drivers are working from 6 or 7 in the morning till 6 or 7 in the evening. I don't call that reducing. If you're going to do something, try to make the workload much lighter on the employees. The way these routes, I mean, like I said, on my street, there's about probably 14 houses in a 1-block area. You got 1 truck and 1 man picking up on that street. Then you cross the corner, you got about 30 houses, and then you got another truck picking them up. I don't say you're making that efficient, because at one point, 1 truck used to take care of that whole street. But now you got 2 trucks taking care of that street, and they're out there.
So
I just don't see how you can do it.
It is my understanding that the drivers that are running the new ASL trucks, which are not downtown actually, because the arms are too big to work downtown, but those are the routes that are finishing up the fastest.
How many of the new trucks do you have?
We only have 2 right now.
2 trucks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
we have 2, we're asking for 2 more, and as she mentioned, they really don't work on the peninsula or in really tighter spaces. You need a little room for the arm to pick up the trash can. They pick up at my house, and they started a few months ago. So he's so much faster that they've been able to extend the length of his route, and so by doing that, they can eventually cut down a route or 2, take a route out, add existing route to other routes. So, but it won't ever work downtown in the city,
right,
just because we have too many tight spaces for it to work and too many cars parked. Councilmember Shealy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the efficiency of this help us to use our own trucks and replace some of the contracted work that's going on right now?
Over time, definitely.
So that's a great question, and I know that was talked about in Public Works today. And, Tom may be able to speak more intelligently to this. But it was my understanding that they've had such a difficult time keeping employees that this actually matched the number of employees they've been able to maintain on a regular basis in environmental services. Not really good answer, but I mean, it could be an opportunity, but I understand that there is that challenge for them as well.
Getting CDL drivers is still a challenge. Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you see those trucks in action in the suburban area, they're pretty efficient. I mean, seriously, they pull up, arm goes out, dumps it, puts it back down, goes right to the next one. Actually, Keel and Seabrook had that stuff for a long time. So in the suburban areas, they work extremely well, but you're right, downtown when people park on the street and stuff, it wouldn't work at all, so.
Yep.
That's right. Councilmember Gregory.
And I think it was on the TRC portion.
Yes, sir.
One of the questions that I raised had to do with participation from neighborhoods, even city council members that attend. Are you following up on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, we have talked about it and talked about ways that we can handle that. Some of the concerns that have come up, just being completely open and honest, TRC it's not a voting body, so that all they're doing is trying to ensure that applicants are following the city code and making sure that those rules are being met. And so, they don't vote on anything, but we are definitely trying to figure out how we can integrate that into the TRC process. Absolutely.
Okay. The second thing that we discussed at the last one had to do with incentives, I think. Have you addressed that? And if so, have you established performance standards that each employee would be judged against in order for that person performance to be assessed as poor, failing, fair, outstanding, etc.? Do we have such a performance standard in the process?
So I know that I missed that budget ad hoc meeting, but I believe that there was some discussion about how we can jumpstart that again, because we're not doing a very good job of doing performance evaluations, and so we're having ongoing discussions. We have a team that's meeting on a regular basis to talk about what is the right way that we can introduce, because I've been here 20 years, never had merit pay. So how do we introduce that into? And yes, so we are definitely looking at that. Absolutely.
And the last question.
Yeah.
Have you done a cost-benefit analysis of the entire NOVAC piece in terms of what cost savings we will be getting and how that compares with the benefit we're receiving?
Yeah, we have not done that. And part of that is what I did not mention today is that we're starting to scratch the surface, if you will. But I hear you. I mean, we're doing this on probably a case by, department and report by report basis. But I think that's an excellent point that we should keep that in mind and be able to do that as we move forward. Really understand what the economic impact and benefit is of this. So I think that's an excellent point.
This is a follow-up. I just can't see managing anything without performance standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
couldn't agree with you more.
How do we do it? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and those are it's a challenging thing to implement, and so we're trying to do it as thoughtfully and equitably as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Griffin.
What changes did the NOVAC group offer to our procurement process?
I really don't know those off the top of my head because BFRC is still working through that report with them. Yeah, sure.
Perfect. All right, so we got one more little, thank you, Tracy. One more report. We had a follow-up meeting of the Hotel Task Force. The main topic was begun on rooftop bars, but really it morphed more into a noise discussion because it really doesn't matter if it's a rooftop bar or a patio bar or what kind of lounge. If it seemed that the main concern was the amount of noise generated. So Mr. Lindsay was staffing that. Do you want to give us a brief report on that as well?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I met last week, convened my staff in follow-up from this meeting, and we have assigned specific duty to the staff. What we're doing right now is looking further into this matter of rooftop bars. First of all, we are going to produce recommendations for an ordinance change and potentially enforcement changes. And we're doing three specific things at the moment. One is we're looking at additional maps for how this proposed ordinance might affect the entire city, and that includes Highway 17 around Avondale, Maybank Highway, other parts of West Ashley, and further mapping that shows how it affects the entire city. We're going to be working with the zoning staff to provide some additional info on Daniel Island. They have their own rules, of course, on almost everything, but specifically look at how rooftop bars would work on Daniel Island in terms of our proposed regulations. And the last thing, and the most important, is further coordination with the Livability Department as well as our Division of Business and Neighborhood Services to discuss best practices on noise enforcement. And this relates to how one enforces against noise violations. All the discussion that we've had so far and continue to have about decibel levels, what's really enforceable, what holds up in court. We're looking into how we do this the best possible way, and we'll be making recommendations about that as well. We're going to reconvene the task force when they are ready and when we are ready to hear that. I think staff is going to have those ready in December. Availability of the task force would determine when we're able to get everyone back together again.
All right, any questions? Councilmember Griffin, then Jackson, then Gregory.
I'm just going to make my point pretty short and sweet. Once again, I think this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We defer something as a council, and it just gets put under a rug and hidden for several months. Why don't you let this body be the one who makes a decision on whether or not this becomes an ordinance? I think y'all should be careful about how much time you spend on this, because when it comes to us, it's going to change. I think that the task force having a meeting or two to discuss it and get some things together is great, but you do not even have a timetable about when this is going to come back. I think that's asinine and ridiculous. So I'm not happy about that at all. Thank you.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just, I haven't sat in on your task force, Mr. Lindsay, so I don't know if this has been a consideration, but in thinking about my district and James Island as a whole, we don't have rooftops to have bars on yet, but we do have a lot more land around establishments. So literally, I was riding my bike with my husband in my neighborhood about 4 o'clock last Saturday, and a very popular establishment fronting on Folly Road that has a parking lot that it comes within 20 feet of the street we were riding on in our neighborhood, residential street. They were having an outdoor extravaganza type party that you could hear, their bands. They must have had 2 bands for like at least 2 blocks. And so that occurs to me that maybe in looking at the wider city and suburbs, that you might want to consider that whole outdoor establishment format, because we won't have rooftop bars in my lifetime on Folly Road, but we probably will have a lot more venues that people want to.
Right, that's exactly one of the things they've been discussing. Councilmember Gregory.
I agree, we should deal with noise generally. But my question is, at the last meeting, we talked about 150 feet standard. And it occurred to me that when someone is doing a nightclub in a neighborhood, we use the 500 feet rule. And I'd like for the task force and staff to be able to explain the difference and why. Not now.
That's great.
But I just think that if we have an existing standard, okay, at 500 feet, why are we at 150 feet for rooftop bars? What's the difference?
Good.
Okay?
Right. All right, Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 1 or 2 calls from a couple of hotelers, and it was about noise. As a matter of fact, whether it's, especially when you get a live band on the roof or on the patio. So his suggestion was, or their suggestion was, maybe you limit it to Muzak or some, kind of pumped-in music like that, versus obviously live band. So I mean, I'm not on the task force, but maybe I'll pass that along for consideration, because it is not the fun and frolic of the people. It's just usually that loud music that creates the problem in the neighborhood things.
DJ can crank it up too, my friend. Wow. So, and we got to be mindful of those musicians that are out there making a living, we support live music, trying to. All right, so we'll come back to y'all in December, you say?
I think so. We're going to poll the members of the group to see when they're ready.
Great, okay. So next, Council Communications, Councilmember Griffin on the legal department ordinance you were proposing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I haven't had time to meet with our legal department about this. We were going to sit down and discuss some of our options, and if it's the pleasure of council, I'd like to defer this until the next meeting.
Just a motion?
Yes, please. Just to give, I'd like to get some background from them so that I can explain this to you, what I'm really looking for, because this started off as sort of a very simple inquiry about what kind of state law we might already have. And, as we've seen in this current election, there's been a lot of players outside of just the candidates that were very involved in this election process this year. But ultimately, this is really just an effort to get more knowledge on what we can do as a city and what our state is already doing. So once I have that meeting with our legal department, I think I'll be a lot more well-informed and kind of able to help kind of even see if I want to go anywhere with this, other than the fact that I think it's a good discussion for us to have as a council, because as we've seen over the last decade, the amount of money spent in the election cycle has drastically gone up. The people that are donating to campaigns has drastically changed. We have seen quote-unquote dark money and all of these other things that can play into different things. So it's an important discussion for us to have. I'd love to have it with you guys, but just want to make sure I understand the legal aspect of it first. Thank you.
Is that a motion to defer? And a second? Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, our council committee reports. First on Public Works. Actually, Councilmember Waring is the chairman, but Councilmember Griffin really ran the meeting today.
Did a great job.
Yeah, great job. All right. So I'll ask Councilmember Griffin if that's okay with Councilmember Waring to report.
Yes, sir. We met today, the Committee on Public Works and Utilities met today at about 3:10. I was fashionably late, and then we began. Acceptance and dedications, we approved both of those unanimously. We had some good discussion on the Stormwater Management Department update, and also a report about Carolina Waste. And I would ask, Mr. Mayor, at your pleasure, if Mr. Fountain could come up and maybe touch on a few of those, especially the Medical District Tunnel Extension, the Stormwater Standards Schedule update, and the Dupont drainage improvements. I think those three are very important. We got really good updates on those, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. The Medical District Tunnel Extension, this is the project we normally refer to as the Earhart shaft. This is, we brought this up for discussion as we had previously approved at council the 30% design for that work based on the necessary time frame to complete that project before the phase 4 construction is complete. So this discussion was that initial 30% of design work will be complete this early winter, December, January time period. So we'll need to bring to council the authorization to continue with the remainder of that design work for next year. We expect to bring that this December. Again, that we are still working on the construction funding, so it was brought up at committee to make sure that whatever we authorize, it only binds us to the design costs, not into the construction costs. And we said that wouldn't be a problem with the way we've set up the work. We also talked about the Stormwater Design Standards Manual. We've now received comments from all of the engineering firms, the Chamber of Commerce, and we had it open as the comment period for anyone from the task force. We didn't receive much other written comment from the other task force members. AECOM is currently reviewing those comments. We will have a follow-up stakeholder task force meeting probably the first week of December to go back and forth with here's how we responded to those comments, what we see as necessary revisions to the manual, if any. And then we would plan to make those revisions to the manual after that meeting, assuming nothing that different than what we've seen so far from reading through the comments and having some initial discussions with the members. We would be prepared to have a draft copy of that manual in late December, so either for a second meeting in December or possibly for a first meeting in January. The Dupont Whopper Drainage Improvements Project, we talked about this, the mayor had brought up with Charleston County Councilmember Moody, the option of continuing a collaborative funding for the work in that basin. And the county's been very supportive of that. We had some follow-up meetings with their finance group. They proposed that we follow up the same 25-75 cost share split that we have for the existing study. So we're going to go through an IGA process to put that together based on a similar IGA to what we did for the existing work, which is where the city manages the project and the county is basically a financial contributor.
Thank you.
How about Burns Lane? What's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Burns Lane was an emergency arch repair. That's the small street that's in between the Yeti store and the Five Guys on the King Street side, and then it runs past the Charleston, College of Charleston TD Arena. Thank you. That's recreational center, TD Arena. In the back, there's their main loading docks and some of their capital project group access points. So we had a pretty significant failure where the road was starting to cave in that area. We had to go in. There was a brick arch. It was a much smaller arch than usual. We actually had to replace the arch with a HDP pipe in that situation. So we just had that discussion point because it was a significant amount of funds that were expended in case there were any questions. Other than that, just if you do want very brief updates on the remainder projects, the Spring Fishburne project, the tunnel concrete is making steady progress now. So we do expect to have that phase completed this summer. Phase 4, which is basically installing the large hole and pipes that extend out into the river to let the water come from the tunnels out into the river. We do have the test piles in now, which is what that structure will sit on top of. It's testing to make sure that the assumed piles design works. We also have the trestle being constructed. You can see the cranes out there building the trestle out into the river to be able to build those pipes and the cofferdams for those pipes. So that's making good physical, viewable process at this point. And then the low battery project, we're in our final discussions with the contractor, finalizing their contract with a plan to have a pre-construction meeting in the next week or two, follow that up with it'll be a public meeting, but it's focused on the residents who will be directly impacted by the construction work who front that construction work, to let them know what will happen with traffic flow and what will be expectations of construction, following then with actual groundbreaking on the project expected for early December. I think that's the majority of the project updates for this week.
Any further questions of Mr. Fountain? Councilmember Lewis.
I got a request, Mr. Fountain. Sometime in October, some constituents of mine on Rutledge Avenue called a meeting with, I guess, a couple of engineers out of your office, and I was invited to the meeting about Simmons and Rutledge Avenue, and they're supposed to back a report to you. They were supposed to put it on this agenda where I could get a copy of it and meet back with the constituents. But could you please put that on the next Public Works and Utilities agenda?
Absolutely.
So I can get a follow-up on the report for that.
All right. Councilmember Gregory. Yeah.
There are several places on the peninsula that, well, we know it floods, but we have not really been having any discussions with regard to how to fix it, like Gordon, like Moultrie and President, Piedmont, Peachtree. I mean, these places are literally rivers. And we have yet really to start any discussion with regard to trying to remedy it, if it can. I know most of them are creek beds, and that's a part of the problem. But I mean, folks have been living with that now, wow, 50, 60, 70 years, and it has nothing to do with any construction. It just is. And so at some point, I'd like to just get some type of feedback on how and if and when we're going to start approaching that issue on the peninsula. I know we have problems all over, but these are areas that traditionally have flooded. You know, I'd like to see all that water pumped into Hampton Park and make it a reservoir during the time or something. I mean, figure out something creative to sort of pump that water out of there if we can.
So if you, that might actually be a good point to talk about a couple of the projects where I didn't get into great detail, and I'll try to be brief, but we do have this prioritization system going into place, and then we have the special protection area mapping, which is showing the areas of known flooding. So the intent is when we have that work complete to come back to council saying, now that we have these areas of known flooding, we have a method to prioritize projects, basically to build that into a master plan with like a water budget type approach, saying each of these areas, what projects are proposed, what would improve the flooding, and how do we rank that out?
And you think that that ranking would be different from the 1984 prioritization?
So there have been a lot of changes citywide in 1984. Some of the peninsula work may end up having a lot of the same similarities, but that still needs to be incorporated, I guess, with what we're spending in the other districts as well into one plan instead of sort of having a special plan for the peninsula, a special plan for West Ashley. I want to have a citywide plan that we can say this is the approach.
Okay, I'm just saying 84 was a citywide plan.
It was.
I mean, we annexed some new areas, okay? And the areas I'm talking about, we've had that problem in 84, and there were specific provisions in the 84 study that talked about how we can correct them. I'd hate to just continue doing it and absolutely nothing is getting done. So somehow, we're going to have to be able to tell the residents in that area, especially Wagner Terrace and Hampton Park, what are we going to do? I'm not saying we haven't done anything. We've done some stuff on Wagner some time ago in terms of enhancing the pump stations. But there are places on the peninsula, especially the Hampton Park and the Wagner Terrace areas, and even on the east side, I mean, I can go on, that just seems to be ignored.
So I agree with you that I think the intent is to have an updated plan that the capital improvement plan then ties directly into, so that we aren't, again, in 30 years looking at a plan saying, why did none of this get accomplished, but to actually have a plan that is where we're making decisions off of. So we do have that actual addressing of the issues, not just identifying the issues.
Right. Councilmember Mitchell, then Shealy.
I understand with all the flooding we have going on, but the problem that I have is that, to me, sometimes we don't do first things first. So far as growing up in the city, like most of us grew up in the city, we've been flooding ever since then. Nothing have never been done, and this is now going into 20th century time, 2020. We've been flooding since the 40s that I know of. And it's still the same way. So we are getting new things done and going here and fixing flood over here, so we say, and doing flooding over here, but these places still was flooding, and it's still flooding as of today, so I don't see any changes being done with it. We are doing nothing with it at all. It's still the same thing over and over and over again. We are going and saying, we are doing this, we have to go over here and fix. But when you're not fixing this problem, and you're leaving this problem alone, you're fixing this problem, then you go into another problem, the first problem still exists, and you're not accomplishing anything. To me, I feel that if we do something and accomplish it, then we don't have to come back to that. That's the way I look at things and doing things, and even construction and anything like that. I'm not going to do my roof and do half roof and come back and go do 10 years later. You see, because it's not going to work. So this is what happened in the flooding. Some of these things was first on the list, and they became 90th on the list when I look at the list again. But they were first on the list to be rectified. And I can tell you as facts, in the city, even with King and Hughie, even with President Street, Fishman Street, Ashley Avenue, they were first on the list, and they were pushed backwards, and then we went to someplace else. So we left it alone. It's still existing now. So now we are going elsewhere, and it's still existing, So when are we going to get to it? This is what the people are saying, and this is why people are getting so an uproar, because they've been hearing this for 50 years or 40 years that we're going to work on this, and they see everything is going elsewhere, but still leaving them in the same position that they were all these years. And this was causing a lot of problems in the community.
I absolutely agree. Most of the projects we're working on now were identified and funded 5 to 10 years ago. So I agree that what we need to do is have a plan that the funding is being based on what's in the plan, so that we all do have assurance that we actually get to the projects we've identified, not just identified the projects, but then built those projects to repair them.
Councilmember Shealy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious what the dates of the current contract are for Carolina Waste. Harry probably knows, or Councilman Griffin knows them.
Yeah, we went into a contract with them in 2014 for 3 years.
Okay.
That's until 2017, and then there was 4 one-year renewals, and we're in our 3rd one-year renewal right now.
And that renewal,
It's not automatic. We can put it up for bid.
what's that date?
I think it's this summer.
June
Summertime.
of 2020.
Yeah. So we would be able to put it out again for bid next year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Councilmember
One
Ware.
of the things we did discuss in the meeting was also looking at bringing our people back on board to do it. Because hardly discussion about our people being the best, but now when you put the automated truck in there, it may be cost effective to get the new trucks in the suburban area that can move through the routes faster, and obviously Keys Ferry Landing being pretty close. So it was a hearty discussion.
All right. Did we have a motion to receive the report from this committee?
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is Committee on Ways and Means.
Second.
I would just note that, remind us that
I have had the
there was some number that was amended.
12.
Yeah, number 12 was as amended.
As
All right.
amended.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, bills up for second reading. We have 1 through 6, and then 8, 9, and 10.
Move for approval. Roseman.
Any discussion on any of those items? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Vanessa.
So next we have, third reading and ratification.
So move.
Any discussion? All
Mayor?
in favor, please say aye. Oh, wait.
All of amendments.
Yes, we
talk about
actually
the
have an amendment on M6, which we laid on your desk, which was regarding the reporting of accidents when there's damage to vehicles. And last time, I think Ms. Zimmerman asked if we could include the language collisions, and the legal department asked for the opportunity to research that to see if there was any issue with state law. If we added that language, we've researched it. We don't have any problem with that, so we've proposed an amendment that we've laid on your desk for second and third reading that would just add the language collisions to the reporting of accidents and collisions.
Yeah. So note that M6 as amended.
As amended.
We had second reading on that, and now for third reading of all 1 through 6, 8, 9, and 10. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next, we have bills up for first reading.
Move for approval 1 and 2.
10.
It was deferred as we agreed we needed further discussion on that, and it will come also to that same Stormwater Manual Review Committee that Mr. Kinsey was speaking of earlier in our meeting.
Wait, where are we?
You said 8, 9, and 10. 10 is deferred. It's 8, 9.
Did I say that wrong? 7 is deferred. 8, 9. I apologize, y'all. 1 through
8
6.
and 9.
And 9. Okay, I apologize. Number 10 was deferred for a public hearing. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Okay.
8, 9, and 10. Yeah,
Yes.
8, 9, and 10, and we voted on it, that's why I was saying. I'll move for
Okay.
approval 8 and 9.
Approve
On second reading.
1 through 6 as amended, and then 8 and 9. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to include 10. My apologies. We have a motion to approve second reading, 1 through 6 as amended, 8 and 9.
Move for approval.
Councilmember Jackson.
I'm sorry, I have to recuse myself on number 1, but I would like to vote on the other ones.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So all in favor of second reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Now for third reading of 1 through 6, 8 and 9, with Councilmember Jackson recusing from number 1. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you for that correction. Next, bills up for first reading.
Over 1 and 2.
We got 1 and 2. Any discussion? Councilmember Jackson.
I have a question. What is the city's intended use for the number 2 for the Juniper Street property? Is that a housing project?
Affordable housing?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So is the land already, do we own it, or is it conditioned on the rezoning? We own it?
We own that property, we bought it a year and a half ago.
Okay, thank you.
So these are the other resolutions. So 1 and 2 for first reading. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. We have a budget workshop meeting this Thursday at 3 o'clock here at City Hall. And then our next regular meeting will be Tuesday. Councilmember Jackson?
Remind the audience of our December meeting schedule, because I got something for the 10th of December that I
Okay.
think is normally.
Our December meetings will be the first and third Tuesdays of the month rather than second and fourth.
Yeah.
First and third.
Make that public.
Okay. Any further business?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Waring.
I'd like to get a sidebar with you and Ms. Hardina, Councilman Gregory, on the Richardson.
On the what?
On the Richardson property on Camp Road. We spoke about it in real estate toward the end, about some recreation dollars.
Right.
We can get a sidebar on that after the meeting.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right now. May I make just an announcement?
One more announcement, y'all.
Okay, so this is the Comcast people. All of you should have gotten information from Comcast that they're having a forum tomorrow. Did anybody remember receiving it? Okay, so, all right, so there is a forum tomorrow, and what we can do is pass this around if you haven't seen it. There are numerous things that begin at 9:45 in the morning with digital inclusion rally, diversity and tech, lunch and learn, and a cybersecurity.
All right. Any further business? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.